how Dave's Ramsey is a threat to the global financial system. It's going to be a long one, my friends, so button up because we got a lot to talk about. All right, so I'm going to read you a section from this book right here, Southern Reconstruction by Philip Lee or Lay. And you'll see where this goes. So if you're like, get to the point, Josh, this ain't for you. Just leave right now. All right. America's Civil War also prompted a radical shift in U.S. monetary policy that fostered the adoption of a fiat currency and a dubious partnership between national banking and the financing of the federal government. To appreciate the change, it is necessary to explain banking theory, beginning with the gold standard. So you got to hang in this. This is so critically important. I'm just telling you, man, this is huge. In English-speaking countries, banking evolved among merchants in the mid-17th century. Shopkeepers normally stored their surplus gold in the King's Mint for safekeeping, until Charles I needed money shortly before the English Civil War in 1638. He confiscated much of the merchants' gold, calling it a loan. And although it was eventually repaid, merchants thereafter preferred to deposit their gold with private goldsmiths who issued warehouse receipts to each depositor. Such receipts essentially became paper money and were preferred in many transactions in place of bulky coins. You see what's going on here? So I'll just keep going. Soon, goldsmiths realized that most of the receipts would remain in circulation and rarely presented for redemption. Ding, 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 ding. Therefore, they could lend money in the form of newly issued receipts, maintaining a gold inventory equal only to a fraction, the fractional reserve currency or economy, equal to only a fraction of the face values of the receipts outstanding. Theoretically, once such loans were repaid, the amount of receipts remaining in circulation would equal the gold inventory, and the smith would have earned interest income on the loan. Pragmatically, however, new loans were constantly created as old ones were paid off. I hope you're getting where we're going with this. As long as the receipts presented for redemption never exceeded the smith's gold inventory, there was no harm. But if ever a holder presented a receipt that could not be redeemed in gold, public confidence in the smith's warehouse receipts would vanish, and the paper would no longer be accepted in transactions, except perhaps as a steep discount to face value. At the start of the American Civil War, about 1,600 banks operated in the above manner. There were no federal minimum reserve requirements. Regulations regarding reserve ratios, interest rates, and loan activities were set by the states individually. The federal government was even prohibited from issuing paper currency. While the U.S. Mint coined money, the coins were struck in gold and silver and therefore became specie or specie. I guess it's specie. So remember, the U.S. coined money in gold and silver was specie. We'll call it specie. Taxes and other funds due to the government, the federal government, were paid to the Treasury either in specie or Treasury notes, which were short-term Treasury debt securities. On the eve of the Civil War, the nation's total currency was about $450 million, of which $250 million was specie, literally gold and silver coins, essentially. The remaining $200 million was comprised of private paper issues. The wheels of commerce required the circulation of specie or banknotes, typically of a nearby bank with a reliable reputation. The enormous Civil War financing needs impelled changes to the monetary system as spending grew from $80 million in fiscal year 1861 to $1.3 billion in 1865. During the war, the federal debt similarly leaped from $65 million to $2.7 billion. Crazy, man. Taxes met only 25% of the needs of the government, whereas federal borrowings accounted for 57%, and a new federally issued paper currency known as greenbacks represented 18%. The first legislated monetary change was the 1862 Legal Tender Act, which authorized greenbacks. Although greenbacks were not redeemable in specie, remember specie is gold and silver coins, the federal government tried to mandate their acceptance by declaring the bills to be legal tender for all debts, public and private, except custom duties and interest on federal debt, which had to be paid in specie. About $430 million in greenbacks were issued before the war was over. Treasury Secretary Salmon Chase proposed to make the paper money more palatable by adding, "In God We Trust" motto that he had earlier put on the coins. Lincoln suggested wryly, "If you're going to put a legend on the greenbacks, I would suggest that of Peter and John. Silver and gold I have none, but such as I have I give to thee." All right. Overseas merchants who ship products into the United States normally required that the U.S. buyers settle account in gold. Thus, early in 1862, the New York Stock Exchange set up a gold room to enable holders of greenbacks to buy gold. Although a greenback dollar traded below parity due to a gold dollar, the amount of discount fluctuated. And at the low point in the summer of 1864, when Ulysses Grant was stalled before Petersburg and Sherman did not seem to be making much progress in Georgia, a greenback was only worth about 37 cents in specie. While greenbacks could not be redeemed for gold at face value, they could be used to purchase federal bonds. So check, this is crazy. Just keep listening. This is nuts. Since gold was common on the West Coast, Californians and Oregons were immediately contemptuous of greenbacks. In November 1862, San Francisco merchants refused to accept greenbacks at anything above the discounted rate quoted in the gold room in the New York Stock Exchange. In April of the following year, the California legislature adopted a Specific Contracts Act. It clarified that contracts entered on the basis of specie were enforceable in specie. Finally, California state government refused to accept greenbacks in the payment of taxes. Oregon followed suit. For years, gold had been the exclusive Oregon currency. Shortly after the San Francisco Merchants Agreement, those in Salem and Portland followed suit. Portland merchants also circulated a blacklist of residents and businesses that try to settle bills of greenback. Finally, the state Supreme Court in Oregon ruled that it was unconstitutional to accept greenbacks for tax payments. However, from a national perspective, the greater unintended consequence of greenbacks stemmed from a combination of their discount value in relation to gold and their use in purchasing federal bonds at par value. The gold discount created an arbitrage opportunity in the U.S. bond market. All right, so I want to talk about something here, because this is nuts, man. There's so much freaking just gravy in this. But notice, I want to go back. So you see what's happening here with the monetary supply. The monetary supply is based on what? Hold on just a second. New loans were constantly created as old ones were paid off to give the goldsmiths in today's days, the modern bankers today, net interest income. New loans were constantly created as old ones were paid off. You see where I'm going with it? So let's go back to, I want to show you guys something. Hold on a second. All right, see this right here? This is the personal consumption expenditures, PCE, as a proportion of GDP, gross domestic product. So check this. This is going up to 2000 and, let's hold on a second. Change the dates. All right, so here's at the end of 2020, right there. All right, Q4 2020. So in 1959, 60% of GDP was in personal consumption. Back then, they didn't call it GDP; they called it GNP, gross national product. Gross national product. I can't remember when they changed it to GDP. I think in the 80s. I can't remember. Anyway, and so what you see here is 60% of GDP was on personal consumption. Stayed like that all the way through the 1960s. It actually dropped to 58%. During the inflationary times, it stayed right there until 1981. So what caused the sudden explosion in, I don't want to say GDP so much, because there was an explosion in GDP. From 1982 to 1999, we had a significant explosion in GDP because of personal consumption. Look at that. From 1981, Q3, when it bottomed out, to basically right there, 2009. GDP, personal consumption relative to GDP went from 60% to 68%. That doesn't seem like much, and that's not log. I mean, I guess we could make a log. Let's see if we can do that. 1 second. Make a log. There we go. What happened? Okay, 1 second. It even goes to April 2021. Look at that. 68% of GDP is based on consumer consumption, personal consumption. Let's try to make this law again. It disappeared on me last time. Let's see why. Why does it keep disappearing on me, man? Hold on a second. Anyway, the point being is what happened after 2009. And this goes back to Richard Kuh's Holy Grail macroeconomics. What is happening now? Personal consumption relative to GDP is going down. Now, it jumped up here. That's because of the fake money that the government is giving out to people who are not working. Look, that's not sustainable. But you see what's happening. Personal consumption is dropping as a percentage of GDP. Why is that happening? Because I think Dave Ramsey is convincing people, remember, right here, theoretically, once loans, or right here, therefore, goldsmiths could lend money in the form of newly issued receipts, maintaining a gold inventory equal only to a fraction of the face value receipts outstanding. Theoretically, once loans were repaid, the amount of receipts remaining in circulation, once there would be more loans being issued. Loan paid off, new loans. Loan paid off. What happens if more and more people say, I don't want to pay the loan. I don't want a new loan. I'm just going to pay it off. What happens to personal consumption? And then what happens to GDP? Look at this. You loosen the lending standards, people start consuming more. People start consuming more and GDP goes through the roof. Or PC, or personal consumption, goes through the roof. Look at that. We're talking about 70% of GDP is on personal consumption. So what happens if people start borrowing less, spending less? All right, so check this out. Right here. This is from First Trust Advisors, Brian Westbury and the boys over at First Trust, which I like. It's a little bit optimistic for me, but that's all right. Real GDP grew at a 6.5% annual rate in Q2, lagging the consensus expected of 8.4%. The largest positive contribution to the real GDP was personal consumption. Interesting. So we have this fake consumption because of the stimulus bill and all that. I mean, it's not just Biden, it happened under Trump too, but it's fake. It's not persistent. We also have a society that's being bifurcated where some people are saying, I'm getting out of the debt machine. I'm not going to borrow anymore, which is exactly what happened to Japan because of Dave Ramsey's teachings. Now, again, I don't like Dave Ramsey's guidance on investing. I don't. But his guidance on paying off debt is freaking huge. It's well worth. What's up, buddy? Oh, there's a dead bumblebee. I need those pollinators, buddy. Anyway, so Dave Ramsey is saying get out of debt. What happens to GDP if you stop borrowing and spending? Look, the numbers are right there for all to see. Right there. I wonder what Japan is. Hold on a second. Oh, I'll just do a different. Well, maybe do it on this. Here's Japan's GDP. 510 billions of yen, and right now we're at 540. And that's after a jump from the, so right here, up, down, up. It hasn't done, I wonder if I can do a log here. Will let me? Let's see. Let's do log. Why? All right. See, yeah, not much has changed. So good. All right. So look at that. After, I mean, that's going back to 1995. That's 25 years. The GDP has gone by that. From here, 510 to freaking 540. Why? Because Japan isn't borrowing as much. They said, no. Richard Kuh calls it a balance sheet recession. Hold on just a second. GDP per capita of Japan, I mean, from, 19, I don't even know what date that is, but 1970, we'll say 1960 to 2000, look at that. To 1995, it went from freaking, I don't know, whatever this number is, I'm not even sure, to freaking, 40, and now it's gone from 40 to 49 in the last 20 years. Nothing. It's interesting, man. When people stop borrowing, they stop spending. When people stop spending, the GDP falls. Here, personal consumption, Japan, from 1994 to the end of 2020, I mean, that's just not that much. But that's, basically going, 30 years now. Hardly gone up that much at all. Let's see if we can log this. I just like to log because it spreads out more to show it a little bit. I'm not sure what this will do. Okay, there it goes. Not much. But I mean, look at this. From 33.22, and I guess that's billion or trillion, I'm not sure, to 33.36. Can we go to 2000? I guess that's it. And that, obviously it's back up here now, but still, it's not that much, man. All right, hold on. Household debt to GDP for the U.S. That's when we're living high in the hog, and it's gone down since. And even here is at the end of Q4 2020. Japan, household debt to GDP, man. Look at that, about 61%. I'm telling you, man, that's that Dave Ramsey is going to kill the economic system. And when I say kill, there's still money to be made. It's just it's going to be less what we have thought because people are saying, I'm getting out of debt. A lot of people say, that's bad. Well, if you're living only on debt as a way to grow your economy, that's not sustainable. At some point, the debt's got to be paid. Pay off your debts. Remove yourself from this fiscal nightmare that is all debt-based growth, man. I'm telling you right now. But technology, I get all that. I get it. 100%. I get it. Things have grown for sure because we're financing this with debt that cannot keep going forever. At some point, you got to pay it off. Now, the federal government can keep printing, I grant you. I mean, they don't have to pay off their debt. They never will. No government ever will. But I'm talking about you specifically. Follow Dave's advice, pay off your debt, and remove yourself from the global cabal of the financial system, man. The proof is right there for anyone who takes it. All right, love to your comments. We'll see you.